Good Thursday morning to you, Algebra. How y'all doing? Hope you guys are fine and dandy. Today we have lesson 12.9. We are going over the zeros of a function. Now, I've got a big definition at first, but let me just remind us. Zeros, it's just talking about the x-intercepts. Quadratics or parabolas kind of look like this. And so typically they cross the x-axis twice. Okay, here's the big definition that I said. A zero, or a root of a function, is the value of x at which the graph of a function crosses the x-axis. It's the x-coordinate of the graph's x-intercept. So it is the x-coordinate of a graph's x-intercept, and this should be, it might be plural. Okay. We've been doing that basically all chapter. So if you are finding the y-intercept, again, y being different than the x-intercept, it's pretty simple. You substitute 0 in for x and solve for y. So we've got a couple of examples where we're doing that. Now, again, in this case, y is the same as g of x. Our vertical value is going to be shown by the function g at the value of x. That's what this is saying. So all we're going to do is we're going to plug in 0 for x and solve for g of x. Okay, well, a lot of us recognize that our constant is the y-intercept, and that's what we're proving. G of 0 is, when we substitute 0 in for x, well, we're just going to get 5. So our y-intercept, where x is 0, right, this is our x value, x is 0, g of x, the function at x, is 5. Okay. Here's another example. Now, this second one is in graphing form, right? Graphing form we did, I think, at the end of last week, a little bit at the beginning of the week. Maybe it was only the beginning of the week. It's all kind of a blur now. Anyway, we have our function at the parenthesis x minus h, right? Squared plus k. But again, we're plugging in 0 for x and solving. Zero minus -1 is -1 squared. -1 squared is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. So this is our y-intercept. Now, again, for the graphing form, I'll rewrite it. So that's f of x equals a x minus h squared plus k. Again, that's just a format. Again, h and k are the vertex. We are going to use this again by the end of the lesson, but we'll wait to get there. I just wanted to write it down so we have it. You might want to rewrite it. Okay. Now we're going to be finding the zeros of our functions. So let's say we have f of x. Ooh, I'm going to need my handy dandy little half of the page blocker. So let's say we have f of x equals x squared minus 4x minus 5. Now, go ahead and write what I have in blue here off to the right. When solving for the zeros, right, those are the x-intercepts. Set f of x to 0 and solve. So when solving for the zeros, you substitute in 0 for f of x. which I've done here. Now, what I have hidden under here is me doing the diamond problem. Because I don't have a coefficient on my x squared, these numbers become my factors. I've substituted 0 for my y, right? This is my y value. Because I want to see where x crosses the x-axis, where y is 0. That's why I've done this. That's why we are doing the zeros. Okay. Now I'm going to set each of these individually equal to 0. Solving for x gives me this. So my x-intercepts are x is 5, y is 0, 5, 0, wow, and -1, 0. These are parabolas, so there are 2 points where it crosses the x-axis here and here. Okay. Moving on, numero dos. Again, we're going to set p of x, right? Our function is p of x this time, not f of x, equal to 0. Now, again, this is more, this is the graphing format again, but we're not solving for vertex or anything like that here. We're just finding the zeros. So we are going to set it equal to 0 and solve for x. Now, in order to get x alone, I need to undo addition and subtraction. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. That's going to give me 6 equals this business. Well, then I need to take the square root of it. What did I do to one side of the equation? I have to do to the other. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. It's going to give me plus or minus 6 over here. Well, plus or minus the square root of 6, excuse me, equals x minus 1. Well, I don't know and I can't simplify the square root of 6. So I'm just going to add 1 to both sides, and x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 6. So our x, so these are the zeros. These are the zeros, but my x-intercepts are 1 plus square root of 6, 0, and 1 minus square root of 6, 0. Again, there's a value for the square root of 6. I don't know it offhand. So my two different ones are 1 plus that and then 1 minus that. Okay. All right, moving. Also, I found my whiteout, and so although it looks like a big old splotchy, that was this note here crammed in kind of sideways and crooked, so it looks a lot nicer off to the left, or off to the right. Okay, anyway, sorry. I got distracted. Moving on. Okay, so given this function, again, whiteout, f of x equals 3x squared plus 8x minus 3. Find the y-intercept, zeros, and the vertex. Okay, so this is all the information we need in order to graph properly. Honestly, guys, with these information, you'll have at least 3 points, right? Our zeros are going to give us at least 1, but we'll have plenty of information in order to graph. Again, the y-intercept is where x equals 0. The zeros are where y equals 0, so y-intercept, x equals 0. Zeros, y equals 0. And the vertex is h, k. That's a comma. Maybe I should do some whiteout. Or maybe not, just move on. Okay, so for the y-intercept, I'm going to set x equal to 0. Find out that y equals -3. So the point for my y-intercept is 0, -3. That's the first one. Why don't I do it like this? The first one. First one. Okay, now the second one. The zeros. Okay, now I need to factor this bad boy. But because my x squared has a coefficient that is not +1, once I do my little diamond problem, I need to take these numbers and plug it back in to my x value. So that'll give me 3x squared plus 9x minus x minus 3. And then I separate and factor them like so. From this guy, I'm going to factor positive 3x. And from this guy, I'm going to factor a -1. So it's going to give me something like that. So when I divide these two terms by 3x, I get x plus 3. And when I divide these two terms by -1, I get x plus 3. So x plus 3 is one of my factors, and my other is 3x minus 1. So these are my factors, not my zeros, but my factors. Because now what I need to do is I need to set this equal to 0 and solve each of them individually for 0. So I'm going to do just that. Solving for x again, right? We're solving for the zeros. 3x minus 1, I'm going to add 1 and then divide by 3. This I'm just going to subtract 3. So my zeros are x equals 1/3 and x equals -3, meaning that my x-intercepts are these 2 points. Okay. Now, the third step is finding the vertex. Now, I've got, what you can do is you can set it into graphing form. But remember, we had to do completing the square, and it's just a whole process. Well, I have another simple trick to help you find what h and k are. So we know our vertex is h comma k, right? We've known that from, it might have been 12.8. In order to solve for it, right, we have ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, in order to solve for h, you could just take -b divided by 2a. Yep, and that equals our h. Mia, I could hear you now going, what? It's that easy? And probably the rest of you going, what? But it really is. So we could solve for h. We don't need to do the whole graphing format. I know, you're welcome. Sorry that you had to do it beforehand, but it really is important to know how to do it. This is the quicker route. And then in order to solve for k, you just plug this in for our x value, and that'll give you k. Okay, so again, this is our formula. Now, I want to solve for h. Again, we're looking for the vertex. That's where the parabola turns. So that's right there in the middle of my thumb, right here, the vertex. And the x value of that vertex is going to come at negative b divided by 2a. So negative 8 divided by 6, which is negative 4/3. Okay, now our k value is going to be where x equals that. So I'm going to plug this in for x and solve. Now, because it's a fraction, it's a little bit ugly. So first I need to square this. That's going to give me 16 over 9 times 3. And that's going to give me negative 32 over 3 minus 3. So here I have 16 over 9 times 3, but I'm going to simplify this to 16 over 3 plus negative 32 over 3 minus 3. Okay, so I've rewritten it so it looks nicer. Now that these have common denominators, I'm going to just add straight across, and I'm going to convert this guy so it has the common denominator. So 16 minus 32 is negative 16, minus 9, right? Changing this into 9 over 3. That gives me negative 25 over 3. So this is my y value of the vertex, my vertex being this point here. So now, with these 3 steps, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points on our graph. And that is going to be enough. Let me pull it out. Sorry, getting my whiteboard. That's going to be enough for us to graph. So let me use pink today. So again, my function is f of x equals 3x squared plus 8x minus 3. Okay, so my first point that I'm going to plot is my y-intercept. It's 0, comma 1 to negative 3. Oop, whoopsies. So it's right about there. The next 2 points is at 1/3, comma 0 and negative 3, comma 0. So 1/3, comma 0 is going to be about here, and 1, 2, 3, comma 0 is going to be about there. And then my vertex is going to be at negative 4/3. Well, so that's negative 1 1/3. Negative 25/3. Where in the world is that? Okay, so that's going to be negative 1 1/3, comma 3 goes into 25 8 times, negative 8 1/3. Okay, so my vertex, so this is a steep one. We knew that because our A is positive 3, so we know it's going to be steep and narrow. So at negative 1 1/3, it's going to be at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 1/3. So our vertex is about here. And so our parabola looks, ooh, whoopsies. Something like that. Something like that. All right, guys, hope that helps. Know that I love you. Again, with questions, comments, let me know. Otherwise, I will be talking to you shortly. Bye.